Good afternoon guys, this is one of those impromptu videos that I'm just going to throw up on the channel. Unfortunately the other week while I've been testing and playing around in Project Cars 2, the gearbox or the gear lever on the Logitech G27, when I'm using the forward gears, will only go into third gear. Now some time ago, and I didn't actually film this for YouTube, I took the assembly apart and found the little wires that are attached to the potentiometer. One of those are broken, and I actually re-soldered all the wires on by that connector. But after taking the wheel apart again, I've noticed that one of the wires was broken. When I've tried to get the clip off the potentiometer, where I soldered it before, it's broke again. I've been online and I have bought, I think they are jst-eh connectors, and they are an exact match for what's inside the wheel. I've actually got some 3 amp block connectors, and what I'm going to do is basically try and fix the wheel and use the block connectors, so that if the wires by the connector ever break again, I don't have to keep cutting wires and soldering. I can just quickly unclip and clip them. Now whether this will cause resistance or stop the signal getting through, I don't actually know, but I'm going to give it a try. This might be a fail, it might be an absolute perfect fix. So on the Logitech G27 we have the main steering wheel here, and here we have the H Shifter gearbox. We've got 6 forward gears, and then we got down and across for reverse. Now this is what we're going to be taking off and taking apart, and I followed an iFixit guide to actually get this apart, so thank you iFixit. So let's start by showing you how to take the gear lever assembly off. Now you may have this mounted to a desk. I have this bolted to my Wheel Stand Pro. Okay, so first of all we've got to remove the retaining bolts for the H gear shifter. So if we just come down underneath, you can see there are actually 2 bolts holding that in on the metal bracket there, and we can easily get these off. So I'm just using an Allen key, and that is a T30. Now I never did these up tight before, I've only left them quite loose because I knew I was going to have to take this back off. Obviously when you're putting it back on, make sure you tighten the bolts up tightly so you don't want it moving around. So the next thing that we have to do to take the Logitech G27 gear shifter apart is spin it round, and these clamps that normally clamp it down to a desk, there's one on either side. We have to remove the bolts from the bottom. We're going to do one at a time, and then this round twisting screw part at the top we have to undo. And then what that will do, if I turn it that way, there is a thread that goes all the way through that, and it will start unscrewing it through the bolt. You'll see what I'm on about in a minute. If we keep going on that, eventually it will come out the bottom of that part. It's quite dark on dark, so I don't know if you can see that. And there is also a bolt in the top part that is held in this section. So what I'm going to do, it's a bit awkward to hold it from the camera, just put my finger to stop that bolt from coming out. I'm going to keep unscrewing. So that's unscrewing at the top there. So keep going. That's nearly out. Keep going. It does seem like it's not going to come out. Right, that retaining thread, the whole part that goes through there is now out. I'm going to drop that on there, and the clamp part is out. You can see the nut in the top of it. Watch that, that will fall out, and there is a nut in the bottom as well. We're just going to put that down to one side. See what I mean about how the bolt can fall out? So I'm just going to put them there and put the nut there. We're then going to repeat that on this side. So I only done it loosely last time. Again, keep everything together, and same thing where that thread is there. When you unscrew it from the top, you'll start unscrewing that thread out. So it's quite difficult to get it the right way on the camera. Watch the leads, obviously they are still connected. So that's now unscrewing. Let's see that coming out of that part. Keep going on that. There we go. And that has come out. Now, because I didn't hold my thumb on the top of the nut, you see the nut in there is still attached. And what you'll have to do, just hold your finger on it, keep unscrewing. But there we go, that side's out. I'm just going to pop that on there. The nuts drop down. So be careful, you don't want to drop your nuts. Now we've done that, we really need to take the top section apart and get this assembly off before we move to the screws on the back underneath to take the whole thing apart. The reason you've got to take the clamps off of this part is because there is a screw thread there and a screw thread there, that if the clamps are on, you can't get a screwdriver in to get them off. But to take the top part apart, just put your fingernail under the top of the gear lever, be gentle, and that part pops up. As you can see, there is some little plastic lugs that just align into that. That's why I say be gentle, that comes off quite easy. And then there is a little Phillips screw head in there, there's a little bolt that holds the top of the gear knob onto the shifter. So I'm just going to grab a screwdriver, and what we're going to do, we're going to take that bolt at the top. Can't really get the angle there on the camera. That should be out, or nearly out. Get it lined up. So I only put it in loose, so now we're taking it apart again. So that has, there we go. So watch you don't lose the screws or parts. That fits into the gear lever. I'll pop that back in. Drop in, there you go, it's dropped in. And on the bottom of the gear lever, I don't know if you can see in there, I'll try and get the light right angle. There is a flat edge, and that flat edge fits onto the flat at the top of the gear shifter. So when you put the gear knob on, that flat edge has to align with the flat edge inside of the gear lever. So now what we've got to do, there's some Allen bolts around the top of here that hold the fabric cover and this top mounting plate to the wheel. So you're going to need another Allen key for that. Now I'm not sure of the size of this Allen key. This is just one I used to have for my days being an engineer. So these are the small threaded bolts. They're like a nickel plated bolt. So just be gentle with these. They can strip quite easily. They seem soft. So I'm just going to go around. Say last time I put this back together, I didn't do anything tight. So I knew I'd be spending the time taking it back apart. So that's that bolt out, and then it simply lifts off, and that is inside the gear lever mechanism. So now that we've done that, there are 3 retaining bolts down in here, one there, there and there, that we have to take off before we start undoing the bolts on the back. Right, so I'm going to undo these 3 screws. Just make sure you're lined up on the head before you actually start unscrewing them, so you don't want to strip anything. There you go. So these are threaded just like that. Little silver Phillips head screws. I'm going to put them aside, keep everything apart. Just remember the bits that you're taking it from. Always worth having a magnetic screwdriver, so that as you're taking things out, it does hold onto the end of the screwdriver. You're less prone to dropping stuff then. That one's not quite there yet. So what we've done, we've removed the 3 bolts from that area. We've removed the clamping bolts for the table, and now on the back we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws that we have to remove. I think because of the lighting you can't see that properly, but I'm just going to start at the bottom. That's that out. Now guys, I'm going to turn it over. Be very careful when you now take this apart, and I mean do it gently, because as you lift that off, there are 2 connectors that connect to the printed circuit board. I don't know if you can see that there. So you've got one there and one on that side. Be really gentle, because we're going to have to take these off, and it's at this point, if you're not sure where stuff goes, the lighting in this room is not brilliant, that you remember where stuff goes. If you're not 100% sure, take a picture so that you remember. So there's a black connector that's on this side, and as I cut my nails, it's making that difficult to come out. That's one out. Be careful you don't bend the pins, and these wires are so fragile. Do not break the wires. And we've got to get the connector off this side as well. Might be just easier just to turn that onto here. Just gently pull these out. There we go. And that lifts directly off. So that is the PCB. That's where those 2 connectors plug into. We're now just going to put that over to one side. And this is the inside of the wheel gearbox. So you can see there, those are the 2 connectors that connect to the PCB at the top. You've got the black connector and the white connector. If we actually come down here, here is the clip off the potentiometer, and you can see here where it's snapped off before, and I've soldered it where it's broke. So what I'm going to do, that's why I bought a new connector. The red wire I've already stripped. Maybe you can see that they're really very small fine wires. The yellow wire I'm going to cut and strip the end, and I'm going to do the same with the black wire. So we need to remember the order in which these connected. So it went black, red and yellow, and the connector went on that way with that edge facing forward. So I'm just going to get the other connector, we're going to get that connected, and then we're going to link these wires up. So if I pop that there, I've got, well you can see that, I've got the red, the black and the yellow wires all exposed. So what I need to do is pop them over out the way and remember how it connected up. So I think it's the same way. When the connector's on, it was black, then it was red, then it was yellow. So in this one it's brown, red and yellow. So what I've done, I've double checked the wiring, and as it goes on here, the little jst-eh connector clips onto the potentiometer there, and it goes yellow, red and black on the wiring. It is brown on the other connector that I've got. I pushed the gear lever forward just a little bit so I can get that on, and that is clipped in now. So now what I'm going to do, just separate these wires at the top, because they are sort of like glued together a bit. Really I need to trim these up and do this. And I'm going to use my block connectors just to link these together. Now I need to do it so that they're all away from each other, but in doing this, if I have to do another future repair, it's just going to be easier to do. Now the block connectors are quite big, so I don't know whether to come a bit further away from the main unit and do it so I can push them over this side. I haven't quite decided yet, so I think I might go for that sort of length. Now these connectors are 3 amp connectors, and I think these are the smallest that you can get. So that is the 3 block connectors connected up, and that plug, the JST plug's connected to the potentiometer. Far more difficult than I thought. I tried to cut what I thought was a solid wire to use as a bit of buffer underneath, but it's actually just strands of wire, and when I cut it they all fell apart. But with these 3 amp connectors, the block connectors, it's actually clamped the wire as it is. And what I'm going to do is now get this connected up, these parts, and then I'm going to tuck all these over this side out the way, just that when we clip the other end on, they're not in the way of the gear lever. So we'll get those connected up, and then we should be good to give it a test. So that's all the block connectors connected up. Well, I'm going to have to make sure that when we put it together, there is a screw that goes over into that. I'm just going to make sure that we miss that part of the screw. So as the housing goes on, it should hold all these wires and block connectors to this side. And with that screw there, it shouldn't really be a big problem. So now what we need to do, we need to connect everything back up in reverse order. This is quite tricky because you've got to get the 2 connectors back on, and we're going to make sure as we put this on we don't hit any of the wires there when we line that up. It should be alright. That's the black one in. And we're going to get the white one in. There we go. So that's the black and the white connector reconnected. So down at the business end, I want to make sure that all these little block connectors are just out the way, that we don't pinch any of the wiring. As I drop that in there, it's in the right place. So the 3 screws are put to the one side over here. I'm going to pop that back in. And I'm going to do it up tightly because this is either going to work or it's not going to work. That's that tightened up. So I can see the block connectors inside. I mean, really, what we could do, we'll get this connected up and give it a quick test. So I'm just behind the camera with the gear shifter, and before it would only go into 3rd gear, but now if we go across 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th gear, and if I push it down, go across and back, oh, I didn't get that right, reverse gear. So now that I've tested it, we're going to get that connected all back up. So now that we know the repairs work, we're just going to get the gear lever cover back on. Just a note, oh, you can see in the light there, there is like a notch, a sticking up bit that protrudes higher than all the others. That is going to go in that bigger hole at the bottom. So that lines up in there. You then need your Allen key. It's a T15, so 15 mil. Okay, so next to go on is the gear knob. Remember, you can get it out now. That little black screw goes in there. Let's drop it into the centre, knock it in. So on the gear knob, probably don't know if you can see that, I mentioned that flat edge. There is a flat edge on it. It's only going to go on the one way, and when it's on straight, it pushes straight down. Then get your Phillips screwdriver, and once it's aligned, screw that back in until it's tight. Replace the shifter cowling. It only goes on one way. It's like a triangle, and reverse is down, across and back, so that's a reverse on that side. So that just clips into there. Be gentle, don't force this on because it's very easy to break these plastic lugs. So it clips in. Gear knob back on. What we then left with, 2 retaining bolts that will screw into the base plate of the G27. We've got the 2 clamping bolts. Now in this one, the nut is inserted in there and inserted in there. It's really simple to get this back on. You turn it upside down, pop your clamp just inside there, and it will just drop in. Push this retaining bolt through into the top. You're going to have to line this up, and then line it up first and start screwing in a clockwise rotation. And you just got to keep going for a while. It will go through that nut at the top. Remember, because the nut's in a hexagon, it will keep it in line. And if you keep screwing and keep going, it will eventually get through the nut at the bottom. Keep going, keep going. And if I turn that round a bit, we can see the bolt has gone through the nut at the bottom. And we keep going. There we go, it's starting to come through the bottom. Now when the threaded part is sticking out enough, you can see that on the camera, the threaded part at the bottom there. What you want to do, get your nut cap, screw that on, so that's screwed up tightly. Now you could get a socket set and just pinch that up, or a spanner, but as this isn't clamping down on a desk, I'm not going to do that. And once you've got it in the that's tightened up, this is like on a spring clip at the top, so if you push that down and twist, it locks it in like a down position, and that's that side back on. We're going to repeat for this side, do that so that's tight, and then that's already twisted in. So here we go, there is the Logitech G27 Shifter reassembled.